everyone, and welcome to the NESG Radio. My name is Sheriff Aderibigbe, and I am a Communications Associate with the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Here with us today is Ms. Adejoke Adewusi. Adejoke Adewusi is a public health nutritionist with a passion for infusing innovation into the public health nutrition space. She's also the project manager of Workforce Nutrition under the Strengthening Nutrition and Priority Staples project with the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition. Adejoke obtained a Bachelor of Science degree and Master's degree in Human Nutrition and Dietetics from the prestigious University of Ibadan. You're welcome, Adejoke.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning, everyone. Pleased to be here.
All right. The topic of discussion today is building high-performing team through workforce nutrition. Adejoke, there has been a whole lot of, buzz in the social media space about workforce nutrition. Please, kindly explain to us what is workforce nutrition?
Okay. Thank you, Sheriff, once again. Workforce nutrition, just as the name implies, simply means we're targeting the workforce with nutrition interventions. So the workforce is a group of people working, employees in the workplace, either corporate or informal setting, while the nutrition there states that we are trying to target them with nutrition interventions across the 4 pillars of workforce nutrition. So just put the two together, workforce and nutrition for the workforce.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you really helped us break it down. So, when we talk about proper nutrition now, from a layman's point of view, would look at it from the aspect of eating a balanced diet. I have all the carbohydrates, proteins, the vitamins, the fat and oil, and water. But how does this, how does my consuming balanced diet, how does it influence my performance in the workplace?
Oh, great. Thank you. So the rationale for workforce nutrition to start with is premised on the research that 1 in 3 people globally are malnourished. So if you count 3 people, you can be sure that one of them is malnourished. And when we talk about malnutrition, it's not just undernutrition. There's micronutrient deficiency, and there is overnutrition or obesity. So either of the 3 could happen to 1 in 3 people. And then research has also shown that 58% of the global working population will spend 1/3 of their time at work. So this gives us an opportunity to reach a lot of people in a contained environment. Seeing that people will spend a lot of time at work, at least 1/3 of your time you're spending it at work, it gives us opportunity to target you with nutrition interventions. So you ask me, how does it affect your performance? Let me even start with a simple example of breakfast consumption. Most of us know that sometimes when you miss your breakfast, you become cranky throughout the day. You can be sure that sometimes you're not even happy because you've not eaten. That's how much food intake can even affect your performance at work or your concentration. But if we also go bigger and we think about the research part of it, nutritional health is very tied to cognitive performance, your brain performance, and is also tied to your concentration at work. So you eating well, you eating good food, you eating adequate diet is important to you performing well at work. And Sharif, I know you mentioned balanced diet, but we're moving from balanced diet now, we're moving to adequate diet. So it's not just you balancing carbohydrates, protein, and vitamin. It's about you balancing them, making them adequate for your needs. Because a pregnant woman has a different need from an adult male. A lactating mother has a different need from a young woman who is of childbearing age. So your diet has to be adequate for you. So we're thinking more of adequate diet now.
Oh, thank you very much. I love the fact that you brought in adequate diet, into the into the conversation. So now we are looking at it from the day-to-day work lives of people. We talked about adequate diet, adequate needs. For instance, now let's take it from the perspective of somebody that is a mason would definitely require more carbohydrates than someone that is that is more sedentary at work. So what are some of the real world examples, for instance, or studies that demonstrate the benefits inherent in having a proper workforce nutrition plan in place.
Okay, thank you. So the workforce nutrition concept, we work across four different pillars. We work across healthy food at work. That is when you provide healthy food for your employees at work. And we also work across nutrition education. We work across breastfeeding support, and we work across nutrition focused health screening. So there are four pillars in workforce nutrition. The organization can take either one or two of the pillars, or they can even take the four pillars. But the most common usually is healthy food at work, because when we talk about workforce nutrition, people say, are you going to provide us with food at work? Is that what you're telling us? But it's just one of the pillars of workforce nutrition. And the real life examples that we have are organizations that are already providing nutritious meals for their workers. Even beyond the providing healthy food at work for them, it also helps employees to be educated on nutrition. For employees that don't really consider fruits as an integral part of their diet, because they are at work and they are always there, if the workplace provides fruits and vegetables to them every day, it sort of helps to change their behavior, and they see the need for, I think it's important that I take fruits and vegetables every day. I think it's also important for me to mention that the WHO recommendation states that we should have fruits and vegetables every day. So fruits and vegetables is not something you have when you just remember. It's something you should have every day, 500 grams. So this workforce nutrition intervention helps us to help the employee to have good food at work, one, and it also helps them to change their behavior. And the ripple effect is that they can go home also and impact the behavior of their families, because they keep doing it at work. It becomes a habit. When they get home, they're like, we eat a lot of fruits at work. I think we should do this at home also. So that's one of the ripple effects of one of the pillars of workforce nutrition.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like you to expatiate on the aspect of breastfeeding in the workplace. You earlier talked about the impact of maybe some workers taking certain things that they've learned at the workplace home in terms of maybe fruit consumption and all. But for breastfeeding, I'd like the audience to have a better idea of how breastfeeding in the workplace should go.
Okay, so seeing that workforce nutrition, we target workforce with nutrition interventions, you might be wondering, how does breastfeeding support come in? But it comes in because the infant that a mother is trying to breastfeed, she's providing adequate nutrition for that infant. So breastfeeding support is a huge part of workforce nutrition too, and we're targeting breastfeeding mothers. So this pillar basically emphasizes the need to give mothers the time, the emotional support, a very conducive environment for them to be able to breastfeed their children, and also creating a place for them to breastfeed. Some workplaces already do that globally, and even in Nigeria, they do that. They have breastfeeding rooms. They have a small, conducive environment, a small, conducive place for the mothers to breastfeed their child. And seeing that we're also promoting exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months, and we know how long maternity leave takes. People are working and breastfeeding. It is important to create that support for them in the workplace to be able to breastfeed properly. So an employer who wants to take the pillar of breastfeeding support will provide a conducive place for the mother to breastfeed. They would also acknowledge that she needs time to breastfeed. So she needs short breaks in between the period in which she's working at work to go and breastfeed her child. So it's acknowledgement of the place, of the time, and also the emotional environment, because you would hear a lot of cases where women say, even though there's a place for them to breastfeed, their employers are not so happy for them going away so long to go and breastfeed, or going frequently. So there has to be that emotional support that says, we support you doing this, and we're not going to bully you. We're not going to look at you as if you're not working because you're breastfeeding your child. So breastfeeding support is a robust and holistic approach to supporting breastfeeding mothers at work.
Okay, thank you very much for that response. As we know, quite a couple of companies are getting to adopt, workforce nutrition, in the workplace. And, for these complaints, I don't know, I'd just like you to highlight, some of the, easy ways these complaints can start up, adopt workforce nutrition practices.
Okay. Because we also understand that businesses are about profit, we are quick to explain the business case for workforce nutrition. Workplaces, employers, they are all about profit. And when you do workforce nutrition in your organization, it also improves your employees' performance because they are much more, they have improved morale, they are much more interested in the work. They feel like you prioritize them. Studies have shown that employees are happier to work, and which also culminates into profit for you because you make more profit. They are able to produce more. The productivity is improved. So before I even go into how employers can do workforce nutrition, just to also emphasize the importance for your workplace because you make more money that way when your employees are productive, and there's even less absenteeism, there's less sick days because they're healthier. So you make more money that way. However, if the employer is willing to implement some of the pillars of workforce nutrition, they can improve access to healthy food at work. So you can provide nutritious lunch for your workers. It could be on specified days if they cannot afford everyday feeding. And they can also work with subsidizing the lunch. You could work with vendors that are providing the food and subsidize it for the workers just to provide healthier food to them and also to help to improve the access to these foods. There are cases of people that have to go 30 minutes, 45 minutes away from their work to get their favorite lunch. There are times where people struggle to get lunch around the workplace for some areas where they work. So if the employee improves access to nutritious food for them, it helps. Another way to also implement workforce nutrition is to also educate your workers on nutrition. So I know that there are some sectors in Nigeria where they dedicate some days where they invite a nutritionist or a dietitian to come and talk to their workers and discuss different nutrition tips with them, especially even talking about nutrition related non-communicable diseases. We all know how diabetes, hypertension is on the rise, and you want to be sure that your employees, they have the right information. So this can also be under the pillar of nutrition education for workforce nutrition. And also you could promote, for organizations that have HMOs, you could promote your employees taking their nutrition tests and nutrition screenings very seriously, especially against around the NCDs that I mentioned also. Some people are walking around with 300 blood sugar level. They don't know because diabetes is a slow killing poison. Some people don't know. So, but if they go for regular tests, they go for regular screening. Same thing with the blood pressure. There are instances of people now that young people are now beginning to have hypertension. And because they think it's an old person's disease, they don't even check their BP. So nutrition education, access to these medical screenings can also be one of the ways that employers can improve nutrition for their workforce also under the nutrition focus screening. And lastly, the breastfeeding support that I mentioned earlier, providing a conducive environment, place, time, and that emotional environment to encourage a breastfeeding mother to breastfeed her child on demand at work. These are the four pillars that an employer can take to implement workforce nutrition with their workforce. And you can be assured that your workers will be excited and they will be very, very happy to work looking at this.
Thank you very much, Adijoke. You've really covered a whole lot within a very short space of time. So on a light-hearted note now, everybody loves food. I'm sure you love food. So what's your favorite meal?
Okay. Well, I'm from Oyo State. I'm from Ibadan. So an Ibadan person that does not like amala is a very... I wouldn't want to say any, but my best food is amala with ewedu and goat meat. And the ewedu has to have the egusi. You know, the one they cook with naming ceremonies. That particular ewedu, yes. So that's my best food. And I'm happy to publicize as much as possible that amala is an elite food.
So would you say that's a very nutritious meal? Like
amala is nutritious. I mean, if there's vegetable, there's carbohydrates, there's protein. There are micronutrients in that soup. If you look at the pepper, if you look at the tomato, I mean, there's beta carotene in the tomato. It's a very elite food. And again, amala cures depression.
Okay. We have to say she just said that out of it's just light-hearted, really. So let's get back to it. In the Nigerian corporate space, since this is basically a new thing, what interventions and policies do you think, corporate environments, companies can adopt, to ensure that workforce nutrition is integrated into their system?
Okay. Yes. We acknowledge that workforce nutrition is a relatively new concept in Nigeria. But then, if you look at the organizations that we have, some organizations are already implementing these pillars already, but it's just not formal or they're not documenting it. For example, if you provide healthy lunch to your workers at work, that's workforce nutrition. You're already doing that. So organizations are already doing it, but they can do better and make the lunch that they're providing much more nutritious, and not just provide a random lunch or a cheap lunch. I wouldn't want to I agree that nutritious food is expensive, like some people say. It takes a lot of thought. It takes thought. It takes planning. So employers can either implement with nutritious food at lunch. They can even work with vendors, the canteens. For those that have canteens, you can insist that in your canteen they have nutritious food options. And by nutritious food options, it includes fruits and vegetables included in whatever they are selling. It also includes, you can also include biofortified vitamin A enriched staple crops like the orange flesh sweet potato that we have. If you put that in your rice, you would think it's carrots. It's that good. They could include vitamin A maize, vitamin A cassava for the fufu that they are already preparing. So it's just thoughtful. It's getting more thoughtful to what is provided as lunch at work. And also mixing that with nutrition education. You can have flyers, you can invite a dietitian, you can invite a nutritionist, maybe on a quarterly basis to come and talk to your workers and just emphasize on their nutritional health. And also you can encourage your workers to constantly go for medical screenings on nutrition, especially in nutrition-related diseases. I saw a tweet one time where somebody was saying at the workplace they need to have a BP machine because his BP, he knows his BP is constantly rising with the number of targets and he needs to go and check and keep checking. So it's just that sensitivity, that consciousness that your employees' health is important. So the employer can also take it upon themselves to promote and advocate for them to go for screenings. You can even have a day where you go for exercises because that is also important. Physical activity is important. I know some organizations do that already. They have days where they just go and play football, where they play, where they do exercise just to emphasize physical activity, especially for those that do sedentary work. I don't want to mention sectors here, but there are some sectors that you sit all day. For the whole week you're sitting, you're sedentary. So that kind of organization can prioritize physical activity. Even globally, there are some organizations that provide you with
Certain gym equipment.
Certain gym equipment. There was a time someone was showing me that you could just be on your laptop and you're on the treadmill. You're working on the treadmill because they are prioritizing physical activity. You could be cycling and you could still be on your laptop. So these nutrition tips, these nutrition conscious tips are things that employers can promote as part of their health intervention for their workers. And lastly, breastfeeding support. We cannot emphasize that too much. Breastfeeding support, we want our breastfeeding mothers to be productive at work and we want their minds to be together. There was a time where something was trending on Twitter where a mother left her child at the crèche that was far away from work and she came back to a dead child. And that crèche was so far away because I'm pretty sure that if she had a closer crèche to work, or maybe even in her organization, maybe there's a small place where she can have a baby and maybe someone who minds the baby there, she would be much more at peace and she would be able to go and check the baby often. And the backlash was that why is she working? We don't want to prevent women from working. We can provide a much more conducive environment for them to be able to breastfeed their child and also be productive at work. These and so many other examples are ways in which we can implement workforce nutrition at work.
Thank you very much. So following up on what you said last, obviously in the workplace you have people of various backgrounds, different cultures, different dietary restrictions. Some may be due to health reasons, some may be due to personal reasons, some religious reasons. So how can corporates, I'm talking about companies and organizations, how can they ensure that whatever program they are doing is inclusive of all people, irrespective of religion, race, or whatever needs they may have?
Okay. I think that's a very important question because, as we all know, food is personal, especially around providing healthy lunch at work. One of the keys at work is to put your employees in the leadership or in the decision makers when you're deciding this kind of intervention that you want to do. For example, in Gain, we have a day where we eat healthy lunch, and I know that I'm from Ibadan. I would most likely want amala to be on the on the meal, but we also have to incorporate the other tribes. So we have cultural days where we spotlight the different tribal food, and it also helps us to get to know the foods across our tribe. So one day we're eating amala, the next day we're eating afang, we're eating afang, or we're eating different tribal food. It could be tuwo or something, just to incorporate the other tribe. And also for the health restrictions, it might be important to incorporate for the corporate to incorporate a nutritionist in the curation of the meals that will be served, and to also put into cognizance the health restrictions of some of their workers. If we have resources for that, you can work with a nutritionist just to curate also. There are meals that cut across all health restrictions that everyone can have. So it's just including your workers in that decision making and getting their own input. And it also it helps ownership. They own it. So it's easy for them to take it up and to also continue with it and also take that knowledge on.
Thank you very much. At least that is very explanatory. So now we are looking at employers, majorly employers that belong to small and medium scale enterprises, that may not have, the financial wherewithal that very large organizations have. So how do you think such employers can incorporate safe and nutritious food during work hours for their employees?
Yeah, so even for the project, we also work with the informal sector, but you also find out that even in the informal sector, employers provide lunch, or sometimes it's just that they give them the money to buy the lunch. So that kind of employer who's interested in workforce nutrition can back it up with nutrition education, or you can back it up with subsidizing. So if their lunch is 1,500, the employer can provide a percentage of that. Another thing they can do is also to work with vendors or work with the canteen and provide some sort of subsidies, or they can even just give them a standard of what is expected to be prepared. So there are cost-effective strategies that an employer can take within the confines of the resources that they have. It's just the thought. It's the thought that counts first. They need to want to do it. There has to be that will. There has to be that consciousness to want to even start workforce nutrition.
Thank you very much, Adejoke, for your time. I'm sure our audience really had an interesting time listening to Adejoke talk about Amala and how wonderful workforce nutrition, incorporating workforce nutrition in the workplace can be. And the benefits for not just organizations but also individuals in terms of both the employers and the employees. Thank you again, everyone, for being part of today's interesting program. You can learn a whole lot about workforce nutrition by visiting www.nesgroup.org. You can also listen to other interesting conversations, interesting podcasts that falls within various sectors of Nigeria's economy by visiting www.nesgroup.org/podcast. Thanks once again, and see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.